Hey guys, you don't understand the master slave morality by Nietzsche, right? Uh, Even though all it is the bully and the bullied. But Nietzsche would never put it in such simple terms because it wouldn't sell a book that way. This has really been annoying me for a long time. These philosophers, I have yet to find one who hasn't turned out to be a woman worshiper, right? And that's why we're going to look at also Nietzsche on women. Was Nietzsche a misogynist, right? This genius didn't know his place around the girls. So let's get into this first.
Of the master and slave morality is central to Nietzsche's 1887 book, The Genealogy of Morals. In this book, Nietzsche outlines two types of morality that have their origin in the ancient world. The first is master morality, in which an aristocratic class designates itself as good and then, as an afterthought, designates the outsiders to that aristocracy, the plebeians, the barbarians, the foreigners, as bad. This mode of moral valuation is therefore what Nietzsche calls self-legislating. The master morality's core concepts are good and bad, not good and evil.
How's it moral, right? This is just the way people behave when they're in the situation of being on top or at the bottom. Didn't begin then. There were always people at the top and bottom in the caveman days.
The master morality begins from the valuation, what I am is good, what is equal to me is good, and whatever is beneath me is not even worth consideration. Quite apart from our modern notion of evil, what the master morality calls bad is not to be fought or contested with. It is simply disregarded.
Yeah, that's the bully. The bully in the playground beats up all the little kids for fun, and when he's done, they forget about it because they're on top.
Nietzsche's example of this mode of valuing is the pagan Greek, who celebrated physical beauty, worldly accomplishment, and wealth. For them, arrogance, ambition, and cunning were not vices, but virtues.
Nothing's changed. Talk to any politician. That's what they value. They'll say otherwise, but they value it. You need to if you want to get on top.
The slave morality originates with the underclass. Their moral designations are essentially externally directed. The slave morality's core concepts are good and evil, or to speak more precisely, evil and then good. They begin with the designation evil, and apply this designation to all those they find to be harmful or terrifying. For the slave morality, good is the secondary consideration.
Well, duh. Since good people aren't hurting you, why would you worry about them? And again, this is just the bullied. This is every person that finds themselves in a situation where they're being picked on and they can't do anything about it. And that includes you. Let's look at the guy talking, essential salts. That includes you, and that includes Nietzsche.
Afterthought. The good man is the harmless man, the one you do not have to worry about. The primary feeling driving the slave morality is resentment. Resentment is the inner state of someone who is harmed, threatened, or coerced, but who cannot defend themselves or repay the harm done. In other words, a state of impotence.
Yeah, yeah, that's the bullied kids at school. There's not much they can do about it. It's not a morality. It's just a situation you find yourself in.
definitive example of this mode of valuation is the Christian slave in ancient Rome. The Christian religion imagines a revenge against their worldly oppressors in hell or on Judgment Day. And this is precisely because the slaves could never accomplish such a revenge in the real world. To sum up,
I don't know about that. Like, for one thing, I'm going to show you two things. The Vatican, aren't they the center of Christianity? Yet, what does the Vatican do? It's one of the richest places in the world. They hobnobbed with kings. They threw out an inquisition if people got, uppity. They excommunicated you. They had all kinds of power. They were the bullies. So, essential salts, you might try to say this comes from Christianity, but the Christians are top dogs. and they have a master morality, don't they? And I want to show you also Catherine the Great. When these peasants actually revolted successfully, she got quite upset. She didn't just say, oh, good and bad. She saw it as evil, right? She was initially sympathetic to some of the Enlightenment ideals, but her opinion evolved over time, became increasingly critical and contemptuous. Who are these peasants to balk at their betters, right? She expressed her disdain for popular movements, stating that they only knew how to pillage and kill. Yeah, but who are they pillaging and killing? Her class. That's why. She feared that if the revolution spread across Europe, a new Tamerlane would arise to suppress it. See, she might get hers zapped, right? She might be dethroned. That's not a slave morality. That's not good and bad. She sees these peasants as evil, right? Let's see. I just want to get this right. Despite her criticisms, Catherine remained an enlightened despot, committed to modernizing Russia along with European lines, right? But Catherine's the Great's opinion of the French Revolution evolved from initial sympathy with enlightened ideals to contempt and criticisms of violence and radicalism. While she remained committed to her own enlightened despotism, she ultimately rejected the revolution's principles and supported counter-revolutionary forces. She didn't want the peasants to break out and exchange places and become the master class, right? Exactly. Oh, and look at this. Despite her criticism of revolution, Catherine remained enlightened. It's right here. However, these reforms that she did primarily benefited a small elite, leaving the oppressive system for serfdom intact. Right. That's really moral, right? That's really moral, essential salts. But like I said, she saw the peasants as evil when they started successfully taking apart the nobility in France, right?
For Nietzsche, the strong will inevitably create one set of values out of their strength, and the weak will create an opposing set of values out of their weakness. It is often said that Western civilization originates out of the marriage of Athens and Jerusalem, and thus does Nietzsche argue that the modern Westerner thinks in terms of both types of morality, to varying degrees, even though these two modes of thought are mutually exclusive. Now, there is a lot more to this idea, and if you're looking for an in-depth examination of the master and slave morality, I did an extensive analysis of it in an early episode of the Nietzsche podcast. I'll include a link to that video in the description. What I want to talk about in this video is the confusion surrounding this idea. Even though
You guys are all confused. We're all confused. These are morals, right? This isn't something as simple as the have and have-nots, right?
it doesn't take long to lay out the basic premises of the master and slave morality, it may not be clear what one ought to take from this exactly. Is Nietzsche an advocate for the master morality, wishing for a return to that mode of valuing?
Well, he would definitely want to be on top. Tell me something. When Nietzsche got rejected by his girl, did he take the master morality, or did he become resentful? Essential salts and start becoming a misogynist. It seems to me that he practiced the slave morality because he had no choice, did he? He was the loser.
Nietzsche a completely neutral party, who merely intends to describe the psychological background of each form of morality without taking a side. And
Really, you think he can't take a side? You think he can stand on the sidelines? You think Nietzsche can avoid the hierarchy? How? Okay, let's get into how this guy describes Nietzsche. Feminist 1970s. Let's see. Okay, Nietzsche and Louis Salom. This is going to be so typical. Nietzsche's such a genius. He took it totally different than the average guy.
his mind. And the answer, of course, lies with Lou Andreas Salome, a woman who he fell in love with, and the disastrous aborted love affair that happened between them. Lou Salome was the youngest daughter of a German-born Russian general, and she came to Europe to get an education. And a lot of that just meant falling in with influential men, and she was known for having.
Yeah, falling in. She went for guys with status. Yep.
An extremely sharp mind, very intelligent, and later became great friends with Freud and had an affair with the great poet Rilke. But at this
So she became friends with guys like Freud, in other words, high status men, and banged high status men. Right.
time, she was only 21 years old. Nietzsche was 16 years her senior.
Really? So she a 21-year-old hottie and a guy who's 37 fell in love with her. What a coincidence. You know, I fall in love with beautiful young women all the time too, Nietzsche. He was such a genius that at 37 he still didn't understand women and what motivated them. He was such a genius, he fell in love with her. He must have saw into her soul. It couldn't be simply that she was a hot young woman in her early 20s.
And he fell in love with her the moment he met her. I think the first words he said to her were, "What stars have brought us together?" And it's immediately from that he asked his friend Paul Ray.
As soon as he met her, geez, I guess, like I said, he must have saw her into her soul. You know, he didn't know this girl from a hole in the ground, but he just took one look at her and said, "Yeah, I'm in love with you."
Who already knew Lou to convey a marriage proposal to her, which she gently rejected. And it's from there. So this is in April 1882 that they're first meeting, and over the next 6 months things just go really bad for Nietzsche here. So his friend Paul Ray has also fallen in love with Lou. So
Oh, wow. His good friend also fell in love with a 21-year-old hottie. What are the odds? To think this woman had two soulmates.
there's this firing of jealousy and each trying to undermine the other in order to get Lou's love, and it culminates 6 months later in their complete falling out. Nietzsche finds that he's been dumped by the two of them, who have run off to Paul Ray's house in France. And
So Nietzsche had no game. His friend had more game. He probably had more status too at the time. This is probably before Nietzsche became the Nietzsche, right? And he's going to sacrifice his friendship over a girl who's rejecting him. That's really embarrassing.
in the meantime, Nietzsche's sister had escorted Lou to him sometime in October, I think, and yeah, it really went quite badly. They absolutely despised each other, Elizabeth and Lou did. And Elizabeth which was trying to turn Nietzsche against Lou, and she brought their mother into the equation as well, and it just went really bad. So at the end of this 6 months, you're looking into November 1882, Nietzsche is left with a complete falling out with his mother and his sister, and Lou is gone, and he's lost his best friend Paul Ray. So
Well, that's Nietzsche's doing, isn't it? He essentially rejected his friend and his family over a girl who rejected him. Nietzsche, who was a genius, he could have turned around and just said, I'm going to accept that I've been rejected and just to keep my friends and my family. He was a man of high moral character. In this case, the slave morality.
He is utterly dejected. He is really quite miserable at this point, and he starts sending a barrage of letters to Ray and Lou, and some of them are just, it's painful reading. He's clearly going through like this spiral of emotions, and some of the letters are just filled with like anger and venom and other.
Hey, essential salts, where are you? Is this resentment that the slave caste talk about? Sorry, the slave morality. Sounds like Nietzsche was really resentful.
Are just completely like, you can just see a man going mad from grief and just shattered emotionally. So there's one letter from December 1882 which is well worth looking at if you keep in mind that this is just 1 month before he starts writing the first volume of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where these misogynistic thoughts start to come out. My dears Lou and Ray, do not be.
Wow, this guy got rejected and then he starts bashing women. Okay. He didn't just know this stuff from the beginning. He had to get burned first. Right.
Be upset by the outbreaks of my megalomania or of my injured vanity, and even if I should happen one day to take my life because of some passion or other, there would be not much to grieve about.
I don't need to hear any more of that, because let's see. The feminist circle around Nietzsche. Wow. The guy became a male feminist, did he?
But there's a really interesting thing still, because it's not like he becomes this barbaric woman hater. In fact, if you look at the last 6 years of it,
he was never a woman hater. He's a typical guy like you and me. He worships women.
Of his sanity. So he went insane in 1889. So from end of 1882 up to 1889, his circle of friends are some of the most progressive, brilliant women of his generation. So you
mean the most educated? They're so brilliant. How come we don't know who they are? What did they write? Nothing. They were just educated women that hobnobbed with high status men.
Got a group of women who are feminists with PhDs who are very intelligent, and these are the people he surrounds himself with. These are the people who are his friends and who are the readers of his works. So it's really kind of this paradoxical thing of he advocates this misogyny while being surrounded by women. So it's that.
There's no contradiction here. He was ranting because he got rejected by the woman he wanted, and then he surrounded himself with a harem of feminist women. And feminist women who hate his guts because he was born male. But it's all right as long as he has them around. Dude, there's nothing contradictory here.
A difference again between actions and words there, and as we'll see, there's more underneath this. I believe there's something very interesting going on psychologically in this development of Nietzsche.
No, there's nothing more underneath. It's very simple. You guys would call him an incel if he wasn't the Nietzsche. If he's just some unknown guy, you'd just say he was an incel and tell him to get a life.
But it's interesting just to see from the perspective of these women, why would they entertain that? Why would they keep Nietzsche around as a friend if this is the case? And the answer,
because they saw his potential for status. They could see, hey, this guy might be going someplace. Feminist women who hate men still marry them and use them. What's your name, dude? The living something or other? I don't give a shit. Anyway, whatever your name living is, that's all that's going on here.
answers, of course, that his philosophy really resonated with them. He's talking about free spirits. He's talking about the higher souls and becoming who you are. And all of these messages really resonate with the feminists of that time. Just the beginning of a feminist movement, the beginning of the woman's question really becoming prominent. And you see these different women. So you've got his motherly friend, Melvita von Meisenberg. She's like the matron of this feminist group, and a great friend of Nietzsche's from the 1870s. So you've got her, you've got Meta von Salis, who was the first Swiss woman to get.
Okay, he became a male feminist and surrounded himself with women. So he was pathetic. I get it. Living. Beyond Good and Evil and Misogyny as a Lever. That might be interesting. Let's try Beyond Good and Evil. Though I've been talking about it already.
So one reason for doubting that Nietzsche's misogyny is just your garden variety misogyny, your common hatred of women, is brought into doubt by his being surrounded by these intelligent women and their testimony of the nature of his character. And
He doesn't hate women, dude. He just hates being rejected. He's a typical guy.
another reason is if you look at the actual writings in Beyond Good and Evil. So from 232 on to maybe 237, 238, he has a string of like these virulently misogynistic aphorisms. But just before that,
So he was being honest, and it wasn't flattering to women. So you're using the M word. Every guy listening, the M word is to the average guy what the N word is to black men. It's the same thing. Nietzsche didn't know his place. That's what's going on. That's all misogynist means.
aphorism 231, he makes this interesting qualification, and it's a qualification that stands out because why would a true misogynist make this statement, and why include it in the work? So let's have a look at it first, and then we can talk about it. Whenever a cardinal problem is at stake, there speaks an unchangeable "this is I" about man and woman. For example, a thinker cannot relearn but only finish learning, only discover ultimately how this is settled in him. At times we find certain solutions of problems that inspire strong faith in us. Some call them henceforth their convictions. Later, we see them only as steps to self-knowledge, signposts to the problem.
Is this a long-winded way of him saying, I got pissed off because I got dumped, and now I'm coming to terms with it. I'm surrounding myself with women. I'm getting over it. Okay, we'll get up beyond that. Misogyny as a lever. This is going to be interesting.
I think for Nietzsche, this misogyny it's a tool, it's a lever. And if you look at the accounts of him with women, it's if there's a woman that he's attracted to, he becomes so coy, so timid, so overwhelmed. He becomes that stereotypical nice guy, and he just can't really communicate. But once
So he has no game. I gotcha.
he's at ease with them, he's just playful, he gets on great. And this is a man who was surrounded by women. So his father died when he was 6, and he grew up with his mother and his sister, and you look at him in later life surrounded by all these powerful women. And so he's a man that surrounds himself with women. He sees his inner genius as feminine, and Lou Salome talks about how feminine a man he is. And
So he's a typical male feminist, right? He sees his good qualities as female, or at least he expresses them as being feminine, right? Okay, typical male loser. Map over with incel psychology. Well, he was an incel, I guess. He couldn't seal the deal.
Nietzsche and his misogyny, you could really map this over onto incel psychology. Now, people make the joke that Nietzsche is the first incel, and I see other people.
He's the first incel, really. So there's never been a man who ever got rejected and then got resentful over it before Nietzsche, or Nietzsche, or however you want to say his name. That's never happened to a guy. Oh my God.
Reacting against that, saying, oh, what are you talking about? But actually, it's a very accurate thing, because Nietzsche is that stereotypical nice guy. He's got a lot going on in his inner world, but it's that thing of the clutches of the great mother, that inability to communicate with women. If you think of the
Clutches of the great mother? Are you making excuses for Nietzsche just not having game? Why can't you just say it? Nietzsche was no good with the girls.
stereotypical incel, the nice guy who's in the friend zone with women and sees women getting with assholes, and he's wondering why they're not getting with him. And then over time,
You mean like his best friend? His best friend got the hottie. So is his best friend an asshole dude?
as he sees this pattern repeat, he begins to lose respect for women, and he begins to think, oh, women are useless, women are liars, women are, and so this misogyny starts to develop in the incel's mind, and they turn against women.
Why would you call it misogyny? Why don't you just say what it is? It's resentment. It's resentment for being rejected. Doesn't need be any special terms for this. Okay, what else we got here? Conclusion. We come to the conclusion.
And that is the philosophical misogyny that I see going on in Nietzsche. It's not misogyny. It's not hating women, thinking that they're genuinely bad or evil or stupid. As all of his actions in his life seem to betray that is a lie. And this section 231 of Beyond Good and Evil, which comes just before all the most misogyny.
This is a lot of apologetics because you wouldn't tell, what you're saying about Nietzsche, you won't give to the average guy. The average guy that gets rejected and then goes on a rant against women, you would call him a misogynist. You'd just say, oh, this guy's a loser. You're just angry because you can't get laid. And there'd be none of these apologetics. You get that, essential salts? That's why I don't bother with guys making these apologetics for Nietzsche or any of these other famous guys. Nietzsche is your guy. You love him. You love his stuff. But let's face it, he was a loser, and especially this master-slave morality horseshit. And talking about it as if he wasn't involved himself. Talk about posturing.